we have been crystal clear that Israel has the right to defend themselves. I mean, my goodness.
Pause means they can still shoot back.
My goodness, Peter, we're giving them security assistance almost every day. But do we advocate pauses by both sides here, temporary, localized, to be able to get Americans out, to be able to get aid in? You betcha we do. That doesn't mean that we're calling for a general ceasefire. Hang on a second. There's a difference. There's a big difference here. And we understand that, as I said earlier, humanitarian pauses have to be negotiated, and you have to have a credible basis for doing it in a temporary, localized way. I would also expect that we would get a lot of criticism from you and from your network and others if we just eschewed the whole idea of some sort of temporary pause so that people couldn't get out. I mean, we're doing exactly what you should be doing to try to look after these folks.
So a pause does not help Hamas.
A temporary pause that's localized, that would allow us to get aid in and to get our people out, is a good thing for the people of Gaza. It's a good thing for the Americans that are being held hostage. And it's not going to stop Israel from defending itself, because the security assistance we're providing continues to flow. And a temporary pause doesn't mean a general ceasefire where the war is over. It means pause, only temporary, for a specific purpose.
And Jay, the temporary ceasefire that the president said he had convinced Prime Minister Netanyahu to put in place to get the Renans out. Can you tell us more about that? Was it localized? Was it for a short period of time? Just anything about the parameters of that?
No, I won't go into the details of that, since we're going to be trying to see what we can do to get additional temporary pauses, humanitarian pauses in place. But in order to move hostages from where they were being held to safety, it does require a short pause in the fighting so that you can do it safely. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, it would be completely unsafe and irresponsible if you weren't trying to find some safe passage for a hostage that you got released while there's an area of combat going on.
Andrew, Admiral, earlier this week you had said after the first airstrike in Jabalia that it's obvious to us that Israel is trying to minimize civilian casualties. Now that you've had more time to see and assess the situation there, would you still say it's obvious that Israel is trying to minimize civilian casualties?
We see in the scope of their operations that they are making efforts to try to minimize civilian casualties. That does not mean, and I did not say, that they aren't still causing some, that their operations aren't still causing some. They are, and each one's tragic. Each one shouldn't happen, and we have been crystal clear about that.
Would you say with Jabalia specifically?
I'm not going to talk about it specifically.
But why not?
Because I'm not going to litigate an operational event that our military is not involved in almost real time. I'm just not going to do that, MJ. It would be inappropriate for me to do that from the White House podium.
But specifically on the question of minimizing civilian casualties, isn't an airstrike that targets a refugee camp or a densely populated civilian area, isn't that sort of the definition of not minimizing civilian casualties?
That is a question for the Israeli Defense Forces. They should have to answer questions about the decisions they're making on the battlefield and how they're doing their targeting and how they're doing their operations. We're not gonna throw it in from the sidelines here all the way in Washington, D.C. I'll just tell you again what I've said 100 times already. We're having daily conversations with our Israeli counterparts about their thinking, about their plans, about their strategy, about the execution of that strategy, and continuing to urge them to do everything they can to minimize civilian casualties.